Good afternoon. I'm so glad to welcome you to another College Connections monthly webinar. This series is designed to give you a unique inside perspective of the programs, people, priorities, and partnerships at the Penn State College of Agricultural Sciences. This marks our 9th event in the series. We hope you're enjoying these opportunities to get an inside look at much of what's going on in the college. We certainly enjoy being able to share these topics with you. Before we begin, as always, we are recording the session and we'll be sharing it via email with all who registered. If you know someone who may be interested in what we're discussing today, we encourage you to share the recording with them. We have a dedicated webpage on which you can find by searching our college's website for PSU College Connections. That's PSU College Connections. You will also find links to all past sessions and registration information for future events. Today's topic, Taking Ag Science Global. I'm joined here today by Dr. Rob Bertram, who's from the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and Dr. Deanna Biering, the College of Agricultural Sciences Assistant Dean and Director of Ag Sciences Global. We are holding today's session in October in honor of World Food Day, which is every October 16th. And the opening of the World Food Prize events in Iowa today, where the 2021 World Food Prize laureate will be awarded tomorrow night. To get us started, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rob Bertram, who is actually at the World Food Day in Des Moines, Iowa today. He's the Chief Scientist in USAID's Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, where he serves as a key advisor on a range of technical and program issues to advance global food security and nutrition. He leads USAID's evidence-based efforts to advance research, technology, and implementation in support of the U.S. government's Global Hunger and Food Security Initiative, Feed the Future. Rob previously served as Director of the Office of Agricultural Research and Policy, and prior to joining USAID, he served in the USDA's international programs. His academic background is in plant breeding and genetics, and includes degrees from University of California, Davis, and 2 Big Ten institutions, Minnesota and Maryland. He also holds a master's degree in international affairs from Georgetown University and was a visiting scientist at Washington University in St. Louis. Thank you, Rob. Off to you.
Thanks so much, Rick, for the warm welcome. And it's great to be back with our Penn State colleagues in the community. And it is an exciting week for all of us interested in food and nutrition as we see the World Food Prize awarded tomorrow night. I want to start by basically saying that I'm going to talk about Feed the Future, which was the American response to a global food price crisis that may have gone unnoticed here in the United States, but in many areas of the world in 2007 and 2008. Prices for main staple foods shot up radically. And once again, we saw that food was a front burner issue. There were riots, there were all kinds of disorders associated with this. And it was a wake-up call to the world, I think, that it was time to once again think hard about investing in food and agriculture. But it wasn't the same old approach that we had used so successfully in one huge way in particular, and that was bringing together food and agriculture and nutrition. And there's a reason for that, and I'm going to, let's go to the next slide. And, you know, we're all used to seeing tragic images of starvation and such, and that is where emergency assistance, humanitarian aid is absolutely critical. And USAID provides that through our humanitarian work. But there's another facet to undernutrition called child stunting. And that's a marker of chronic food insecurity. And it actually affects far more people. And as you can see, the global hotspots are really South Asia. 35% of children are stunted, and sub-Saharan Africa, nearly a third. And you can see also a little hotspot in Central America, where we also see high rates of child stunting. This is a marker for chronic lack of quality food in the diet. And there are other factors too. We know that clean water and sanitation matter, and we know that care matters. And very importantly, women's empowerment and education is a great marker for children getting good care and access to health care and such, in part because their mothers can read and they can see the health information that's coming out. Let's go to the next slide. So stunting, people don't grow, children don't grow as fast as they normally should. But along with that comes a much greater risk of serious health problems and, very tragically, a reduction in cognitive potential and development. And this has been measured to actually cause huge changes over the lifetime of an adult who has been stunted as a child. They'll earn less money, they'll attain less education. And of course, at a societal level, it can run into billions and billions of dollars per country in terms of lost economic growth. So this is a human issue, but it's also a socioeconomic issue. And really, we hear a lot about equity these days. And what is more foundational to equity in life than getting a good start? And that includes, nutrition. So we've made great progress in 12 years. This really began in an emergency response to the crisis under President Bush. Feed the Future was stood up under President Obama. And then we had President Obama actually sign the law, the Global Food Security Act, because of the progress we were making, and President Trump reauthorized that. And then we've just heard recently President Biden at the UN General Assembly speak about this, and we've heard Secretary Vilsack in USDA and Administrator Power at AID all commit to this recommitment. So this is a bipartisan effort, and the success I'm referring to is we've raised 23 million people out of extreme poverty, and that often goes with that child stunting. You saw that map of the stunting. It would be the same map if I showed you extreme poverty or micronutrient deficiencies like iron deficiency anemia or vitamin A deficiency. So, oops, can we go back one? And then we have the women's empowerment, where we're seeing that this is a great factor in the success we're making. We estimate that there are 3.5 million fewer stunted children because of our work. We saw COVID-19 lay bare the vulnerabilities of the food system, and where it was hardest hit was the food chains that have the most human involvement. So fruits and vegetables and dairy and perishable products like fish and other animal source foods. So that's part, and meeting that is part of that micronutrient deficiency challenge that I mentioned, where we estimate that 2 billion people are affected by micronutrient deficiency, sometimes called hidden hunger, but its effects, things like blindness, all kinds of susceptibility diseases, these are not hidden. Next slide, please. So what do we do? A lot of it is about connecting farmers to markets and helping them grow more. A lot of it is translating improvements, and I'm going to say more about this, in technologies and management practices, or post-harvest loss prevention, value preservation or addition. A lot of it is that, and we draw on our research partners like Penn State to deliver those kinds of changes in partnership with their counterparts overseas in the countries where we work. We have strengthened regional trade. We try to work with governments to improve policy, because that's one way that we incentivize private investment on farm and off all across the food system. And we've aimed to improve access to better nutrition services for mothers and children. Next slide, please. So why agriculture? So this is an older slide, but there's some new data that confirms it, and I'll refer to that in a minute. But this one was shown very straightforwardly, and it shows you that growth in the agricultural sector is much more effective at reducing extreme poverty than growth in other sectors. Why is that? because it creates demand for locally produced goods and services. And in 2019, the World Bank came out with a report that emphasized this, that it's up to 4 times more effective than other kinds of economic growth in reducing extreme poverty in the poorest countries. Next slide, please. And now this looks complicated, but it's a great story, so bear with me. What you see there is you see population growth in the straight blue line, and you can see what happened in 1960. It started racing ahead. And some of you will remember that we thought South Asia was going to starve, the population bomb and things like that. But then look at agricultural production, soaring ahead, soaring ahead. And that's basically because of science, and we'll talk more about that. What did that do? You see the blue line that goes up and down? That lowered prices. And remember, the poorer you are, the more of your meager income you spend on food. So this was like putting money in the pockets of poor people across Asia and Africa and Latin America, especially Asia and Latin America. We didn't do as well in Africa. Every day in, day out, and they use it for school fees and healthcare, and they invest in their farm or they start a business. And then the last great story here is that bottom line. This has all been done with very little expansion of land. And that's huge. And what that means is that if we care about environment, biodiversity, tropical forests, our global climate change, we have to get agriculture right. We have to use the tools and techniques and science that helps us increase productivity using less resources. Next slide, please. And this has huge implications when you look at a region. In South Asia, they're growing 2.5 times more food in 50 years from just a little bit more land. Whereas in Africa, they're growing a little over 2 times as much food, but they're using way more than twice as much land. So this is not poverty reducing, and it's not sustainable over time. And we know that Africa continues, so much of its growth, 70%, is due to just bringing more land under cultivation at low yields. That's not a prescription for growth. That's a poverty prescription and a malnutrition prescription. So we're working with partners like Penn State to change that. Next slide, please. And this is a little technical, but what it shows you is in that green piece, there's area in the red. That's the traditional way agriculture used to expand in our own country in the 19th century. Then we got inputs like fertilizer and such. But now the big focus is on this last one, this total factor productivity, where it's the knowledge, better genetics, better resource management, soil and water fertility management practices, everything, better market efficiency, all coming together, weather forecasts, market information, all of that. So that's what's really driving environmentally friendly growth in agriculture. Next slide, please. And you can see that even in the developing countries, since about 1980 or so, at first the Green Revolution was water and fertilizer. But now the growth is on these knowledge products, better technologies, better resource management practices. And that's why our science partners are so important. Next slide, please. And here's what we can see from this. This is in the El Nino drought in Africa 4 or 5 years ago. And you can see that girl, Mary on the left, she is holding an ear of corn from the traditional variety. On the right is the drought-resistant maize that her father and mother are growing on their farm, and it is done so much better. And this has meant they don't go on emergency assistance, or they don't starve or skip meals. They have maize to sell, and this is a huge impact. And it's come out of partnerships with U.S. universities, local partners, international agricultural research centers. Norman Borlaug, the father of the Green Revolution, is being celebrated this week here in Des Moines. This builds on some of his early work, and private sector companies like Corteva and Bayer are major partners as well. And of course, American farmers could benefit from this. Next slide. And we're getting faster and faster. That drought-tolerant maize took decades of work. Now, in 4 years, working in South Asia with Corteva, what used to be Pioneer, and Purdue University, and local partners, you can see the heat tolerance in 4 short years using genomic selection. So this is not transgenics, this is using DNA mapping to select heat tolerant maize. And guess what? Our American farmers will benefit from this heat tolerant maize as well. This is a win-win science partnership. Next slide, please. Now, it's not just about seeds, it's about resource management. And look, here we are integrating 2 kinds of legumes in a rotation system that builds soil fertility, that conserves water and carbon. And the implication, this is in Malawi, the implications of that in the next slide, you'll see the old system in the center, the blue line with, it used to be single crop maize every year. This is another university was very important in this work as well. We see here that by going to this doubled up rotation with legumes, we are getting far more fertilizer efficiency, much more protection of the soil, much higher, 50% higher protein yield, 2.5 times as much profit, better nutrition for the family, more biomass to feed animals, water efficiency, all with the same amount of water. So it's not just genetics, it's also agronomy and knowledge and good resource management practices. Next, please. And there are some things where we don't have good solutions. And this is where biotechnology is so important. And, you know, in our country, it has revolutionized, it has ended the soil erosion crisis in the Midwest, in the Corn Belt, by virtue of the maize that doesn't need to be weeded, and the soil is protected. In some of the places we work, there are problems we can't solve, but we can partner with science in the public sector, in our universities, and in companies like in some of these cases when was Monsanto, and create new solutions that these are being led by our partner countries, and the evidence we can do great things. Next slide. Eggplant is the most important vegetable in South Asia, and it's highly nutritious, but it's subject to these terrible attacks, and people were spraying sometimes 80 times a season. So you can imagine the human health burdens for the people putting the spray on it, the killing of non-target insects, bad for the environment, for birds and everyone, and food safety issues. So we've cut that in half. Farmers are making much more money. They're using safer kinds of insecticides. So this is a great story, and it's science being demand-driven, and it's public and private, local partners, American partners, global partners. It's a great, we have a lot of exciting work like this. Next slide, please. Now I want to come back to nutrition. You know, we hear a lot about overnutrition, chronic health issues, obesity, but in low-income countries, the big challenges are still undernutrition, both hunger and just the chronic food insecurity and stunted children. So not all solutions are one size fits all. And the reason I want to make this point in the next slide is to show you that animal source foods, and we'll go to the next slide, please. Sorry. So you can see that we're talking about quality of diet and lack of energy. And then, you know, we also know that we can improve our diets for people who perhaps don't make poor choices or don't have access to better foods. And these solutions can go together. Let's go to the next slide. So here's what we can do in terms of livestock. It's mostly a smallholder crop. Same thing would be for fish. These are vital foods that people don't eat enough of in the developing world. People they don't get enough micronutrients. They don't get enough animal source protein that's so high quality. So this is an important part of improving children's diets, improving their long-term outcomes. And it's also one of the ways that we can help their families improve their livelihoods and make quality foods and quality diets more affordable. So we think about livestock management and feed. We've worked with Penn State in areas like that, breed resistant animals. We can think about new vaccines, and often we can get ahead of a curve on a disease that's not in our shores yet, but might come someday. Next slide, please. And animal source foods, if you don't eat enough of them, without other kinds of supplementation, like vitamins and such, which are non-existent in these poor rural areas where hunger and malnutrition and extreme poverty concentrate, If you don't get a certain amount of your calories from animal source foods, vitamin B12 deficiency is just one of the ways you will suffer. And this is very important for pregnant and lactating women. It's very important for child growth and development. So this is just one example, but there are others. So, you know, it's not people may eat more than they should of certain kinds of foods in one place, but in another, maybe it's only on Christmas. That's the way it is in Malawi. That's not enough. That's not enough dairy. That's not enough eggs. That's not enough fish. Next slide, please. So I want to say a bit about the partnerships and then I'll wrap up. We work with over 70 US universities in what we call the Feed the Future Innovation Labs. And these are great partnerships because, you know, there's the old saying, you don't give somebody a fish, you teach them to fish. This isn't even that. This is, you work together with them to learn how to fish better in the waters where they live. So our scientists from Penn State and other partners work side by side with scientists in the developing world in these countries where poverty and hunger are so entrenched and malnutrition, and they solve problems. It's purpose-driven research, and they build the next generation of people that are going to be the leaders. And those people make lifelong connections to our country and our institutions. This is a great strategic investment as well as being a great science for development investment. And you can see the great variety of labs here. We have 2 just awarded. We have another one about to announce. So I'm very excited about that. I can't speak to it now, but I hope to speak to it soon. And as I say, it's really building these deep partnerships and building the capacity so that our partner countries can solve their own problems in the future. So it's a great story. One more slide, please. So the benefits, this pipeline of innovations in a climate crisis world, climate change, this is vital. We have places where farmers are still doing things that they did, planting the seeds they planted 30 years ago, doing things that will not cut it in a climate challenged world. Also, we can document the huge benefits to US farmers and ranchers and consumers by virtue of these two-way flow of technologies. Because when we jointly solve problems with our partners, we learn lessons we can bring home. Maybe it's a new kind of resistance or a heat tolerance. Maybe it's some other aspect of controlling an insect that's coming to our shores, all kinds of things. And then I want to say global benefits. You know, stable countries where people have enough to eat and the economy grows, because agricultural growth is the best way to drive economic growth broadly, create employment opportunities on farm and off. This provides stability, prosperity, trade, and fosters democratic societies. Finally, I want to say that our new administrator, Administrator Samantha Power, has committed to continue what we have done thus far. We have exceeded our goals to reduce poverty, extreme poverty. I'm talking very extreme poverty and child stunting by over 20% in all the areas where we work with our partner countries. She has said she has renewed that commitment and that target. So we've got a North Star and we're following it, and we're really grateful for partnership with organizations like Pennsylvania State University and all the public and private partners, farmer to farmer, all the volunteers that come from Pennsylvania in our work, and the great support also of Senator Casey. He's one of our champions in terms of understanding how much our country has to offer because of our diverse and rich agriculture, and how much we stand to benefit from these partnerships. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rob. That was you painted a very clear picture of the challenges that are facing global agriculture and America's commitment to do something about it. And one of the things I was reminded of is the important things are Africa and research. That's where a lot of the emphasis needs to be, isn't it?
That's right. You're right, Rick.
Thank you. And so with that, I'd like to next introduce Dr. Deanna Biering. Dr. Biering is responsible for leading and coordinating the college's strong and growing portfolio of international research and educational programs. She joined the college in 2000 after more than a decade in Washington, D.C., which included an appointment to the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy under the Clinton administration as the Assistant Director for International Affairs. She also worked for the CIA and the Department of Commerce. In 2020, Deanna published her first book, This Tree Is Me, on the career and life exploration, and she was also elected to the State College Borough Council. This year, Deanna was honored with a Distinguished Alumni Award from her alma mater, Albion College. And an interesting fact about Deanna is she speaks 3 languages, including French and Chinese. Since Deanna joined the college, she has overseen our effort to boost global learning among our students through classrooms and through studying overseas or in multicultural communities right here in our own backyards. She's adopted a strategic approach to our research and outreach portfolio to help link our local interests to national and international goals. For example, thanks to the local donors, the Waskop family at State College, we've been able to link our Ukrainian American communities here in Pennsylvania and the US to colleagues in Ukraine. Our work has been designed to support the development of a strong ag-based economy in Ukraine as a way to help the transition to democratic society, one that has the economic fortitude to withstand national security and other threats to its success. A prime example of Rob's call for international engagement is critical to our own domestic agenda. And I should also add that Deanna and the college have been widely recognized for international programs as being among the strongest at Penn State, and a large share of the credit for that goes to Deanna. So with that, take it away, Deanna.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dean Roush, not just for those kind words, but for your huge support for our efforts here in the College of Agricultural Sciences to really weave a global perspective into our tripartite mission of teaching, research, and extension. And of course, an enormous thank you to Rob Bertram for making time today during World Food Prize events to join us here. He has been an excellent partner for Penn State University. He has been a leader in the field for decades, as you can tell by his amazing presentation and kind of knowledge of the complexity of the issues related to food security, and of course being a very, very articulate advocate for why these engagements abroad also mean so much for us here at home. So I'm going to do 3 things in the time I have today. I want to actually take the opportunity for those who might be new to the global portfolio of the College of Agricultural Sciences here at Penn State. I want to introduce the program Ag Sciences Global and what we do here and our approach to global food security here at Penn State. And then highlight just a few of our many programs with a particular focus on those that we have done in partnership with USAID over the years. All right, so bear with me. We'll see if we can just do it this way. I know it's not pretty picture perfect, but we'll give it a go this way. Ag Sciences Global, we are a small but mighty team. You can see a photograph of our small team there, but we have a big mission. We, as a team, try to catalyze global engagement among faculty, students, and staff by building partnerships around the world for research, teaching, and outreach. And we're really trying to leverage those partnerships to work together for new innovations, as Rob made mention of, for solving some of these complex global challenges. I want to say a brief pause here and just do a brief history of agriculture colleges around the United States and their role in some of these programs globally. Because for those of you who don't know, USAID and universities have had very strong partnerships going all the way back to probably the 1960s, 1970s. And it's actually required by something called Title IX. It's a congressional act to forge this partnership between USAID and the universities for global development. And in the 70s, in particular, it was kind of the heyday of global agriculture. Big emphasis on building agriculture programs around the world to feed the world. But those kind of dried up in the 1980s and 1990s. And what you saw happen at US universities is because a lot of those big programs were very focused on the rest of the world and not necessarily on bringing benefits back to the United States. A lot of those big programs at places like Penn State, Purdue, Iowa State, Ohio State, they all shriveled up and kind of went away because they didn't have a constituency. There was no appreciation for how these global connections really fed back into our teaching, research, and extension outreach missions. So Penn State decided to change all that in the year 2000, and we built a program that was really focused on bringing global benefits back to our own mission here and integrating them in new ways. So since then, as Rob Bertram said, the US government has reinvested in agriculture as a key cornerstone for economic growth and democracy building around the world. That agriculture has been recognized as critical to those very basic functions of the world in a peaceful way. So Penn State is ready to be an even better partner with USAID in making those things happen around the world and right here in Pennsylvania. So we actually have been around since the 1970s in some shape or form here at Penn State, but recently we changed our name from the Office of International Programs to Ag Sciences Global to really illustrate to the world that we have this vision of a global learning for all, our commitment to work to connect the domestic to the international and vice versa, and to advance the global nature of what we do, and hopefully impact the world in a really important way. So how do we do that? In our teaching mission, Penn State College of Agricultural Sciences is home to some really unique programs for our students. We have an undergraduate minor in international agriculture, which is one of the largest and most popular minors in the college, I'm happy to say, as we kind of help our students who are dedicated to agricultural sciences understand their place in the global economy, in the global food systems. We also have the world's only, as far as we know, and nobody has disproved me, the dual title degree program, graduate dual title degree program in international and agriculture development, where students in a number of our graduate programs like entomology, rural sociology, plant pathology, forest resources, can also get a second master's or PhD in international ag and development to help prepare them to be global leaders in feeding the world in a sustainable way. So we're really proud of that. And that particular program has about 40 to 50 graduate students enrolled in it every year. We also have a robust study away program and are really leading the way across Penn State in trying to make our study away programs sustainable and accessible to all students. So we're taking a hard look at our study abroad programs to make sure that we find ways to offset our carbon footprint when we travel, and we are raising funds for students who cannot afford to study abroad and really make those accessible to everybody. We also, if you can see down in the right-hand corner, we are also doing not study abroad programs, you'll note I said study away programs, by having students spend time here in Pennsylvania working with multicultural communities to really understand how the kind of multicultural nature of the world is really right in our backyard, and how exchanges and knowledge about the issues that our communities are facing can really enhance their success as they march off into their careers to support Pennsylvania agriculture in the context of the larger food system. We also have a number of outreach programs that run out of Ag Sciences Global, and I'm just going to highlight one. We are trying, because it's actually relevant to the World Food Prize events going on right now in Iowa. So we have something called the Global Teach Ag Network, which reaches out to K through 12 teachers, to agriculture teachers, to help them weave a global perspective into their classrooms at those younger ages. An annual conference last year of this group had 1,000 participants from 50 states, not all, but 50, and 40 countries around the world. And they are being highlighted right now, tomorrow, in a session with the Secretaries of Agriculture from the United States, Mexico, and Canada, as a way to showcase how to promote the engagement of our young people in global understanding about the food system. So we're really proud of our outreach efforts there. Our research portfolio over the past 20 years has climbed to about almost 100 million over the past 20 years that the college's faculty, in partnership with Ag Sciences Global and others, have brought into the college to investigate and advance some of the technologies that you've heard Rob talk about today in partnerships around the world. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those programs as we go down into some more specifics. Our vision for the future is very ambitious. We are framing what we do for the future around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly those related to agriculture, food security, obviously, reducing inequalities, One Health, and climate change are things that we are going to try to really lead and invest in as we go forward, because we feel that those are areas that we can take some of the things that we've done domestically to for the greater good globally, and vice versa. So I'm going to, with regards to food security and our vision for working into the future and in partnership with USAID and others, I'm just going to do a little lesson on food security that actually comes from our introductory class for the minor for the undergraduate minor in international agriculture. So, what is food security? This is, I think, just important to take a pause as we go forward. Food security is when all people, right, at all times, have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active life. So this has been the definition that people have used since the 1996 World Summit. And I think you heard many of the things that Dr. Bertram said in his remarks: nutritious, access, active life. And those are things that we want for our children here in Pennsylvania and for our children around the world. So it's still hard to really understand what that means. And so when we work with our students to help them understand what food security really is, we break it apart into these pieces. And this here again has also been a definition and an approach that has been used by the United Nations Food and Ag Organization and is widely adopted now. So we oftentimes talk about availability, access, utilization, and stability. And the tests in the introductory class will oftentimes ask you to put things into those categories. But for availability, you can think about, okay, how do we make sure that we have enough food to feed the people? So that's a very simple way to look at it. Access. How do we make sure that the people who need the food can get it, either through kind of physical infrastructure and roads, but also creating markets and the financial wherewithal to purchase the food that they need. So those are some of the components of access. And then utilization. This is where nutrition comes in. You heard Rob talk about micronutrients. So is the food that people have access to, is it really meeting their nutritional needs? And is it safe? Okay. Food safety is a big component of this around the world. You know, if the food that people have access to is contaminated, it's not actually being used successfully by their bodies for that healthy and active life. And then most recently, the people that create these kinds of definitions also added in the notion of stability. Because if you are living in a country that is racked by war, famines, either man-made or disaster-related, you don't have that stable supply. And so stability is really underpins all of these things. Okay, so that's enough for the introductory lesson to food security, but I love reviewing it once in a while because it really helps break this complex issue into pieces, and you can see how they all kind of tie together. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just highlight, like I said, a few of the programs that we're doing here at Penn State's College of Agricultural Sciences in partnership with USAID over the years that get at some of these components of food security. Some of these also will showcase how we've taken our strengths domestically and applied them to kind of global challenges. And the International Food Safety Initiative is a great example of that. Many of you who are on the call today know that Penn State College of Ag Sciences has a crackerjack team of faculty looking at food safety issues, doing trainings, and our extension is taking, working with the businesses and producers and in our communities to ensure our own safe food supply. But early on, with support from USAID through a partnership we have with Virginia Tech, we were able to start thinking about how we could take what we do and help countries around the world ensure a better and safer food supply for their own people. And we started out in Armenia, thanks to USAID. And since then, we have taken our food safety programming to Ukraine, several countries in Eastern Africa, and also in the Caribbean nations. So we're really proud of our International Food Safety Initiative. Because it is such a critical component of food security, right? In that utilization box that we just talked about. Similarly, we, in the past few years, took a good look at what we had done here in Pennsylvania through the Pennsylvania Women in Agriculture Network to strengthen women's role in agriculture and the productive enterprises related to agriculture. And we thought this could be a really important thing to also take around the world. Because research has shown that as women get more involved in the productive enterprises related to agriculture, you see improvements in availability, more food is produced. You see more accessibility because markets and finances grow. You see more in utilization because women oftentimes take care of their children with nutrition. And so we have, with USAID funded, take some of our gender work to women in Honduras, Cambodia, Ghana, and some more places to come. But as Rob said, we can't quite announce some of these new things yet. Finally, Rob mentioned and showed you that beautiful large map of all the places where USAID has supported some Feed the Future innovation labs. And I'm really proud that Dr. Lynch here at Penn State hosted one of those innovation labs for the past 5 years to take some of this new technology that he has developed to help adapt beans varieties to a changing climate, whether it's low phosphorus soil, drought, etc. And as we all know, during a changing climate, having plants that can adapt and grow in harsher climates is going to be critical to feeding our planet. Finally, we also are looking forward to new work with USAID to support the extension of an effort that we have created here at Penn State under the leadership of David Hughes that has developed a mobile app to help smallholder farmers around the world identify pests and diseases that threaten their crops. And here again, looking at food security from the availability angle, like to make sure that the crops that people are growing are protected from plants and diseases, so there's more food available for the populations around the world. So I sped up really quickly because I saw Rick's face come back on, knowing that we have a lot of questions in the audience. So I'm sorry I zoomed through the last few slides pretty quickly, but this gives you a flavor of the things that we are up to here at Penn State in partnership with USAID. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Deanna. So now it's time for the questions and answer period. We have some that were submitted. We'll work through those first. But if you have others, submit them to the Q&A box, and you can get answers. And Rob was just working on an answer to one. So one of the questions we had that was submitted, I think might have been covered already when Deanna was discussing food safety. What are the obstacles that prevent achieving global food safety? Have any thoughts on that, Rob?
Thanks, Rick. Yes, I do. It's actually an area, we have one of the innovation labs that is focused on food safety issues. And there are two big areas of concern, I think, at least from my sense. One is, and this is a traditional problem, is having good storage conditions and making sure the crop is adequately dry before you store it. There's something called aflatoxin, and that's something that can infect grain, other things, that has a very insidious toxic effect. In a very high dose, it can be fatal, and we've had outbreaks of that in places like Kenya. But improved storage. So what are the innovations? Dry meters to test dryness, very low cost. Storage bags that are hermetically sealed, so neither the fungus nor even insects can attack, because there's no oxygen there, and they both need oxygen. So there's things we can do. And then, of course, all across the food system, you can try to make sure that food is safer. And of course, in our country, we enjoy a food system where there are safeguards, and industry is very committed to high levels of food safety. The other big piece that's a huge challenge is in perishable foods. So things like fruits and vegetables, fish, meat, where you can have biological contamination. And we also worry about that. There are diseases like brucellosis that can cause human health impacts and also affect cow productivity. So there's many different ways that we try to enter into the food safety struggle, but all of it can be, if we do it right, economically led, because we're preserving and enhancing value while we're solving the food safety problem. But it is still a huge problem.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the questions is about how we can meet the dietary needs of our own people while helping with the needs elsewhere in the world. I think Rob gave us lots of good examples of that. So I'm going to move ahead. One of the questions that came up was, how can a small scale farmer gain access to these technologies? And one was particularly as an example, ask about how people might access these technologies and ideas in Sri Lanka, for example, and whether we're currently involved there. Any comments?
Well, the digital revolution has changed a lot. Even in some of the poorest villages in the world, far from roads even, people may have cell phones. And this can be a game changer in terms of learning about threats, pests or diseases, or technologies, what's available. So increasingly we see that leapfrogging of information helping to bring more options and choices. And, the questioner points out a really fundamental concept here. A lot of our work, it's not about telling people what to do. It's giving farmers options. Just like in the United States, farmers make many different choices based on what they think is best for them. So we're working with those overseas partners. But we do care about extension. We talk about teaching, research, and extension in the land grants. The same concept is very applicable. And many countries where we work don't have that same approach of having research, education, and extension connected. But our partnerships with Penn State and other land grants really help bring that mindset. And it helps both the public, but especially the private sector, become more involved in providing better information. And there's, again, with internet and such, a farmer can visit a small dealer, an agro dealer, and he or she can check or learn all kinds of things if there's a web connection there or if there's information available. So we're trying to use all the new tools. We've worked with a lot of US universities too in this space to try to make sure we're getting those innovations. I love the fact that Deanna mentioned students working in communities that are more multicultural, perhaps marginalized in some ways. We think they're really valuable lessons there that can also be applicable in the countries where we work and vice versa.
And I think Deanna previously mentioned Plant Village, and that's been, the innovation driven by David Hughes is try to take advantage of all the things you just talked about to get information out to the small landowners.
And I should have mentioned that because Penn State has been a leader in this space, but absolutely, that's right at the heart of that, using modern technology to leapfrog the knowledge gaps. And then as we get a more diversified agriculture, the knowledge becomes more and more important.
So one of the other questions, kind of an interesting one, is do you think more regulation or less regulation helps us get better food security throughout the world? And on the one hand, Rob, I listen to your message that we need to connect farmers to markets. We need to improve regional trade, and the growth in ag reduces poverty as much as 4 times better. Is it just getting rid of tariffs? What are the kind of regulations that might stand in the way of improving the agricultural system?
I'm really glad for the question. It does matter. And it's not, for me, it's not a question of more or less regulation. It's about evidence-based, science-based policies and the policies that increase the predictability and transparency for farmers and everybody along the value chain, for businesses that want to invest. So we do work in that space. The other thing is, think about an innovation like a seed or maybe a new safer crop protection innovation. If a company comes to Africa and there's 16 countries, each of which have separate regulatory systems, what does that mean? So we've worked, again, with US universities and partners in those regions to try to get regional harmonization that make markets bigger and incentivize private sector coming in. We recognize that development assistance from countries like the United States, we're a drop in the bucket, but we can work in ways to try to make systemic change that then incentivizes all kinds of other innovation and investment.
It's fantastic. So one of the questions that was asked is, and maybe they already do, will USAID support agroforestry research?
Yes, so we've done so for many, many years. In fact, Ratan Lal, who's from Ohio State University, was last year's laureate, but he's here this week when people, a small group are here in person anyway. He did foundational work in the 1980s, where trying to move beyond slash and burn. We've all heard of that in the tropics, right? Slash and burn agriculture, and it's shifting cultivation. And you can do it with a very low population, but once you have a large population, that won't cut it. You have to learn how to manage the soil and the vegetation in a sustainable way. There are challenges with agroforestry. It works in some situations. There can be strong high labor requirements. And so we see challenges, but there's a lot of interest in it. There's a lot of interest in integrating perennials, trees and crops in some settings, including fodder trees that provide livestock feed or other, other uses. Also, more biomass for increasing the soil fertility and the yields and responsiveness to inputs and other efforts that farmers make.
So thank you, Rob. Deanna, one of the questions was, what are some of the examples of the things that were due for food safety in Armenia and Ukraine? Can you put somebody on a way to quickly access some of the reports we have on that?
Sure, absolutely. I can. One of the main areas of two main areas of focus. One is this notion of building human capacity, which is also a very important part of USAID's mission, is so that people can become their own advocates and leaders. So our food safety team has done a lot of train the trainer types of programming in Armenia and Ukraine, so that the Ukrainians and Armenians can extend that learning into and integrate that learning into their educational programming and carry that forward in the way that makes sense for their own cultural context. The second way that we've been participating in, and this is in Eastern Africa, the other capacity issue is there's a lack of laboratories that can conduct the necessary experiments on food pathogens and whatnot. So we've done some lab capacity development as well to help build laboratory tools and techniques in some of those countries. But if whoever asked the question could provide their email, I would be happy to send some reports from both of those projects. Or you can also go to the website for Ag Sciences Global, and you will see a link for the International Food Safety Initiative there that also lists some of those reports and highlights some of those programs.
Well, we're coming close to the end. There have been so many questions that have flooded in, but there's one last one I just want to touch on because it's so important to us locally. And that is that according to a recent survey, 30% of our students suffer food insecurity. Can you please comment? And coincidentally, completely by coincidence today, Penn State News today published an article on Penn State food pantries. And so we are very concerned about this at all across the campuses of Penn State University. And that's just one example of some of the work that's being done in those areas. So with that, I probably need to draw it to a close. We're just about out of time. I want to extend a special thank you to Rob Bertram and to Deanna Biering for taking time to be with us today. As in every one of these College Connections, I learn a lot from our guests, and today was certainly no exception. It was fantastic. So to our audience, before you log off, please make a note of the next session listed on your screen, or it should be listed soon. There we go. Now, Shafranik has just put it up. The next session is set for November, and I'll be joined by Dr. Blair Siegfried, who's the newly appointed Associate Dean of Research and Graduate Education, as well as Dr. Suet Irmak, who contributed today on the chat Q&A. Suet is the new head for the Department of Agricultural and Biological Engineering. So thank you for joining us today. We hope you have a great afternoon. Stay safe and see you next month.